FanDuel has released their 2022 NFL DFS Week 1 salaries. We'll take a close look at the main slate for running backs, a key position to get right in your Week 1 lineups. And it's all coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm ECKLER.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. This week, we'll be giving our initial take for Week 1 main slate on FanDuel, and we'll be specifically covering running backs. You can also look in the description to find links to our Week 1 DraftKings and FanDuel shows where we discuss main slate player positions for other positions.
Now, news will likely come out after we post this video that will alter some of our opinions, which is why we'll be releasing a full FanDuel Week 1 cash lineup and GPP lineup closer to the beginning of the season. So if you haven't yet, please hit that red subscribe button to make sure you don't miss any of our future content.
A quick request from our FFC community. We want to hear from you, so please put your thoughts in the comment section. Tell us your favorite FanDuel running back on the main slate for Week 1 and reasons why. Eric, let's go ahead and get in the studio and tell them what we got going.
Michael, we're still 3.5 weeks before the season starts, so it's very possible that bargains will come up at running back, and you'll definitely want to take advantage of them. But for now, it looks like some of the best players are the more expensive guys, because at running back, it's more predictable of their outcome. So we're going to really break down the top 12 in the 3 tiers. So let's go to that first tier, the top tier. Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Austin Eckler. Who do you like among those top 4?
Well, like you say, they all seem very expensive, but as you go down the list, it still seems pretty expensive. And the differential that you get for spending up for these guys, I think, is quite significant. It's really tempting to look at Christian McCaffrey third down the list and say, gosh, he's not first. He's always been first, and get a little bit tempted there. But I think Jonathan Taylor is the safe play here because of both who he's against and just how strong that offensive line continues to be. You could argue pretty heavily that there's an upgrade at quarterback as well with Matt Ryan at the helm. And so I think, going up against that atrocious Houston defense, picking up where he left off, by far the best back at the second half of the season last year. I think he's going to come out strong. I think the others are, going to have a good week as well, but I just think that he has the most upside and his floor is similar. So that's where I would go, again, mostly because of the defense and the strong offensive line and quarterback upgrade.
I certainly get it. Jonathan Taylor's facing Houston, and he shredded Houston both times that he played them last year. Great implied total of 26. And, when you look at those 4, he's not coming off an injury like Henry and McCaffrey is. But you said you could be teased by Christian McCaffrey? Well, consider me teased. I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey as my favorite. The $700 is significant of the savings. If they were the same price, I'd want to go with Jonathan Taylor. But I'm going to take the $700 savings and go to Christian McCaffrey. I don't like him quite as much on FanDuel as DraftKings because of the half PPR. He's such a threat. But the bottom line is, as long as we get the news that out of the end of preseason that he's 100% healthy, this guy, when healthy, performs. And everyone thinks, yeah, he performed 2 years ago. No, he performed the last 2 years when he was healthy, and those 8 healthy games, a combined 135 combined yards receiving and rushing, with 6.5 receptions and an average of 1 TD. So Christian McCaffrey is a guy that I'd like to go with at $9,500. What do you think, though, of Henry and Eckler? I mean, my opinion, Michael, is if you can swing it, and it's going to be difficult, I have no problem if you get 2 guys in this range.
Yeah, I agree. And look at what they're up against. Tennessee against the New York Giants, who've been very bad against the run, and the Chargers are up against the Raiders, who were really bad against the run last season. So, you're going to get a lot of performance out of each of these guys. I actually think you can't not have one of them in your lineup. You have to have at least one of them in your lineup. So I like all 4. Just again, feeling like Taylor of the four is the one who I feel best about. But I agree with you. The $700 savings with McCaffrey is meaningful. I think the same goes to with Eckler. You get an extra $100 there.
Yeah, and if you are going to get two of the guys, you probably are not going to be able to afford Jonathan Taylor as one of the two. But look, Derrick Henry is a guy who's in great game environment. He's a home favorite, 6.5, 25 implied total. And yes, some critics will talk about his offensive line has not been as good as in the past. He averaged a yard per carry less last year. But as you pointed out, he's facing a Giant defense. So I think that their O-line will not have a problem with the Giants' defensive line. And Austin Eckler, I know it's on FanDuel, half PPR, but Michael, I just love what he gets involved in the passing game. I know what people say is, look, yeah, I know he's a gets a lot of receptions, but he averages 9.5 yards per reception. The difference with Eckler and most other backs, they design plays for him in coming out of the backfield. And finally with Eckler, he's become a goal line presence. I mean, the fact that he gets the goal line carries is huge. He got 9 TDs last year inside the 5.
I know it's tempting to think that since he's a smaller guy that he's not the goal line back, but like you said, they've decided to go with that pound for pound. I think a lot of people think he is the strongest guy in the NFL. He's been able to stay relatively healthy. So to me, that's meaningful. And for Henry, I think you got to account for the fact that he is getting involved in the passing game more than he was early in his career. And that's definitely helpful. Should we go to the next tier, Eric?
Yeah, let's go to the next tier. After we spend all their money, Michael, which means they're not getting a top flight wide receiver or top flight tight end or a top flight quarterback if you're picking 2. But you might say, hey, I don't want to go with that top tier. I'm only going to get one of those guys. What about the next tier? DraftKings is giving away Najee Harris. But FanDuel said, no, we know he has more receptions than any other running back, so we're pricing him up. So I am not as high on Najee Harris on FanDuel, which is, by the way, a half PPR versus the full PPR. My guy is Joe Mixon. He's my home favorite, 25.5 implied total. And don't underestimate the fact that Cincinnati made a strong effort to improve their offensive line. 3 new starters. I think that's going to really pave the way for a big season with Mixon. And the fact that he is their only goal line presence. They don't use another running back, and they don't have a quarterback in Joe Burrow that likes to run the ball. I like Joe Mixon for 8,300.
Yeah, I mean, let me first just say Najee Harris still not getting enough respect to get his picture up there. I think that's a little bit unfortunate. I agree with you. As tempting as it is to go with the guy who's, drawn the worst rush defense, or at least worst against running backs, which, it's a little surprising given Cincinnati's how strong their team was. It's tempting to go there, but I think the reason he is so valuable is because of his pass catching, which is a little bit less valuable in FanDuel. So I agree with you. I think Mixon is the play here. Just kind of touching on some of the other guys real quick. Alvin Kamara, his ever since the change in quarterback from Drew Brees, his pass touches have gone down, and his average yards per reception has gone down. And so even though Atlanta is one of the worst defense, I think the worst defense, it's tempting to go there. But I think Mixon is the guy who is most likely to get more touchdown opportunities this week. And, that obviously plays a big role when it comes to running backs.
Yeah. And traditionally, Alvin Kamara has done better without Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas looks like he's finally going to be healthy this year. So I'm staying away from Kamara, and I'm staying away from Dalvin Cook. At this price, if I'm spending this money, I want to have more certainty. It's a new offense. It's a new offensive. It's a new coaching staff. Do I think that they're going to use Cook? Of course. And I expect them to use him in the running game. But how much will they use him in the passing game is my question, because last year that was down. And he needs to get more involved in the passing game to justify this particular price. I'm going to do a wait and see on Dalvin Cook. So, all right. So we talked about those 2 tiers. Let's go to the third tier, a group of running backs. And like we talked about, Michael, there are still some very good running backs as we go down to this next tier. But well, let me eliminate someone on my book. I'm not a fan of Nick Chubb. You might say, hey, Eric, this is FanDuel. It's okay that he doesn't get involved in the passing game because it's only a half PPR. But he still shares time with Kareem Hunt. He steals carries from him. And here's the terrible thing. I used to always think Nick Chubb, yes, but he's the goal line back. He'll get all the rushing touchdowns. Not true. Nick Chubb in the last, 37 rushing touchdowns. And this is only games in which Nick Chubb played. He only has gotten 20 of those touchdowns. So no thanks. I'm out on Nick Chubb. I hope I didn't set it up that you're going to brag about Chubb.
Well, the one thing Cleveland does very well is they have a great offensive line, but you hit the key point. He shares time, right? He shares with other backs. Let's add an S there because it is plural. And I think that is what you want to be careful with, especially during the early parts of the season and you don't know how things are going to shake up. It seems like they kind of like to go with the hot hand as well in Cleveland. So I think that bodes better for some of these other guys. I think Connor is tempting because of how he performed at the goal line last year, but that was really his saving grace. And I just don't ever like to rely on that, especially in a game where I could see Kansas City going up kind of big with some of the holes that Arizona has this week and them not being able to rely on their running game as much. So for me, I actually go to the bottom of the list and go to Aaron Jones. I think with the loss of Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones becomes even more important near their goal line. He's obviously a very comfortable place for Aaron Rodgers to go. Minnesota wasn't necessarily tough on running backs last year, even though he does share time with Dillon in the backfield, is the one with the most upside and kind of similar floor to these guys as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. Aaron Jones is my favorite in this tier. And some of you guys might say, wait a minute. You just blamed, you didn't want any part of Nick Chubb, who was sharing time. And now you're getting Aaron Jones, who AJ Dillon is on the team. Yeah, but Aaron Jones gets involved in the passing game. And with Devontae Adams out, there are a ton of receptions out there because guess what? They didn't replace him with any big acquisition to join the roster. So I think he's going to be a huge beneficiary in a low-key, high-scoring game. Watch out, folks. Everybody is going to be focused on the two highest over/under, 53 and 52, with the Chargers Raiders and the Chiefs Arizona game. But this one is the third highest on the slate at 49 over and under. So I like Aaron Jones here with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, looking for someone to throw to. So
and we didn't give Swift much airtime.
We kind of quickly went through Swift, didn't we?
We swiftly went through him. That's right. So I think we got to acknowledge that Detroit has a stronger offense than they do on the defensive side of the ball, and so they try and keep up with teams. Philadelphia hasn't been tough on running backs, and so I think DeAndre Swift, as he hopefully stays healthy this year, is going to have another good season. I don't think this is a bad play. In fact, I think I like him a little better than both Connor and Chubb for the reasons we just mentioned. Well, Eric, is there anyone else that's in the bargain level here? And bargain, again, like you said earlier, is really not that significant. As you look down the list, who's calling your name?
Yeah, not a lot are calling my name. Now, again, that may change later with injuries, but my gosh, at 6,800, how the times have changed, Michael, for Saquon Barkley. I mean, who would have thought that you could have gotten Saquon Barkley for only $6,800? He just has burned me and others over and over. But when I look at the players around him, look, he's a guy that is a bell cow back. He should get all the rushes. He should get involved in the passing game, and he should be a goal line guy. So given the discount, if I was going to pay down here, I think of these players, he's the one I know the role the most. He's game script proof. He's my guy, although I would prefer to spend the money and pick players higher than him.
Well, Tennessee obviously tough against the run last year. I think he's one to keep paying attention to week in and week out. I think if it's possible, if he has a few tough weeks early on, he could start to become even better priced later in the season. But for this week one, like you're right, it's kind of scary to save this money for guys who may not give you hardly any points at all.
Yeah, compare him to a guy that's the same price than Antonio Gibson, who looks to be very enticing. A home favorite against a terrible team in Jacksonville last year. But the problem is I'm not 100% sure on Gibson's role. I know exactly what Barkley's role is. Last year, he ceded receptions to J.D. McKissick, and now they drafted Brian Robinson. So I think you're just hoping that Robinson doesn't get involved in the game plan in week one as a rookie.
Well, there's nobody else who really excites me too much. Is there anyone down the list that you wanted to talk about, or if we hit on the key guys?
Yeah, I think we have. Until we get closer to the season, I think that potential bargains will rise up. We want to keep an eye on Baltimore, who's facing a New York Jet team that is pretty bad. They had two guys that went down, their two starters last year, with serious injuries in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. It's unclear whether one or both of those guys will be out. I think the right now, J.K. Dobbins is looking better than Gus Edwards to play. But obviously, if both of those guys go out and no one replaces them on the roster, it's all Mike Davis's backfield. So he'd be a guy to watch, but we got to stay up on the news. All right, so that is the list of running backs. Be sure to check out our other shows that we've done for both DraftKings and FanDuel, where we analyze wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. We'll put some of those videos on the screen now, as well as they're in the description. And until we see you next time, take care.